Okay, we're finally going to get to verbs so we can actually form a real sentence. This is chapter 15. English and Greek verbs. In both cases, they are one of the three major components of a sentence. In English, the subject, the verb, and the object make up those components that make up a complete sentence. In Greek, we have the nominative, the verb, and the object is usually in the accusative case. A verb performs an action or describes a state. The transitive transfers action, this is describing an action, transfers action from the subject is doing something, to the direct object. The subject does something to the direct object. So we have the woman, the subject, sees the verb God as the direct object. The woman sees God. And we have in Greek, he Koine blepe ton theon. The woman is in the nominative, blepe is the verb, and ton theon is in the accusative, is the direct object. An intransitive describes the state of a subject. That is, it doesn't do action, it describes a state. And because it doesn't do action, it can't take a direct object. So we have the man hopes. Hopes describing the state of the man, a state of hopefulness. In Greek, ha anthropos elpise. A linking verb like eimi, or to be in English, functions as an equal sign. That is, the subject and the predicate are going to be in the same case. The children are good. Okay? It's not easy to see this in English, but the children and good are both in the same case. In Greek, it's much clearer. Ta tekna estin, to be, agatha, and agatha is in the same case as ta tekna in the nominative. As a reminder, estin is a singular verb, and ta tekna is a plural noun. The reason being that plural nouns, if they're neuter, take singular verbs. For both Greek and English, verb endings can change according to person and number. I do, she does. Now, the changes are not spectacular in English, but they are consistent throughout Greek. For Greek, the pronoun is contained in the noun. Actually, it's the suffix of the noun, so that the verb endings have to change with person and number. So we have estin, this is the one we've had so far, to be eimi being the main verb, I am. So eimi, that me, is an I. Eimi means I am. A sin, very different. The ending sin there means you. You are. Components of all verbs. Mood. Mood is a relationship of a verb to reality. Okay? Verb is the relationship of a verb to reality. That is, we move out of reality when we begin with questions of this is true to this might be true, this could be true. Okay? So the relationship in mood is a verb to reality. There are 6 moods in Greek, but this semester we'll be looking at only one of these verbs, and that will be the indicative. And the indicative, which is the most commonly used, is the verb that reports fact or reports reality. Now the thing about the indicative is this reporting may not be correct. I can say the earth is flat, and that, when I were doing it, would be indicative, but we know that that fact is wrong. The second component is voice. Voice is the relationship of the verb to the subject of the sentence. And the possibilities are active. That is, the subject is acting. I throw the ball and someone else receives it. There's a middle ending in Greek, which we're going to talk about later, but we'll just know that Greek has a middle ending. And the third ending, that is like an ending in English, is that the subject is being acted upon. Okay? I was thrown the ball. Okay? I am in a passive state, even though I'm in the subject of the sentence, but I'm receiving the action. The next one is tense. Now, in English, tense is about time, when it happened. Okay, we have future, present, past. Those are all about time. In Greek, the verb is about two things. It's about time, when it happened, and aspect, the manner in which it happened. So we want to look at aspect. Aspect is the manner in which the action is to be seen. Okay? The author is writing, and he wants you to see the action in a very specific way. So the author uses a verb with a different aspect to let you know. And there are three different aspects, and some grammarians would say only two, which is quite logical too. There is continuous. Continuous aspect is one in which the action is ongoing or regular. So we can say the water is falling. So there's a continuous action here. At least while the sentence is being said, the water is falling. The undefined action is action in which the author is not giving us a definition. And we would usually translate that as the water falls. Now, that doesn't mean that the water is not falling or it's still falling, but it means that we are to understand that the author is only interested in the fact that it falls. The third one, which is extremely important to us, is called the perfect, and we won't get this till the end of the semester. But this is a unique to Greek and a gorgeous, gorgeous form. This is action that has ended in the past, but that past action still is affecting the future. So, it has been written or it is written. That action of completion of Torah is still being performed into the present. So, one way we could say it is the water has fallen, and I have my parentheses here, and continues to fall. So that's the way the water has fallen. Something has happened in the past, but it continues to affect the present. Formation of verbs. Greek verbs are formed by three components. A prefix that shows time, and this prefix is actually only used in the past tense. The tense stem of the verb, that is, the stem with the meaning of the word. A tense formative, and we're going to look at this, these are unique to different tenses that tell us, just with this one character or two characters what tense it is in. A connecting vowel between the tense stem and the pronominal ending. Now, Mounce uses this within his writing, but I'm not going to be using the connecting vowel. There's another way I'm going to be putting it. I'm going to add it to the pronominal ending. And the pronominal ending contains information about the person. It tells us first, second, or third. As I said, this is the pronoun. And it also tells us that whether it's singular or plural. There are lots of other things it's going to tell us. But these two things about the pronoun, it's always going to tell us. Formation of the verb. Now, what I'm going to talk about right now has to do with the possibilities of the verb and not what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to give you a general thing right now, but we're not going to be using all the components. One of the components that we will always use is the stem of the word. And it is the stem of the word that contains aspect. In this case, we're going to be using lu. As I said, lu is one of those verbs that does not change in Greek. So it's a perfect verb to be used throughout all the different tenses. We'll always have a pronominal ending. In this case, men tells us that it is first person plural. Now, these two things alone would have made up the present tense, but the following things are also possible later on. We could have a tense formative, and a tense formative is one or two characters that specify the tense of the verb. And the final thing that we could have is a time prefix, and this time prefix, usually an epsilon, is used to tell us that it's in the past tense. So in this case, we're going to get eluthemen if we add the prefix, the stem, the tense formative, the pronominal ending, and we would get a we were destroyed. These forms are not going to come for some time. I'm just showing you what the forms are that will eventually be added. Present indicative, chapter 16. The present indicative is made up of the components, the mood, and that mood is indicative. Remember, I told you that mood has to do with the relationship between the verb and reality, and the indicative verb is the one which is the closest to a statement of fact. We have aspect, and in the present, the aspect can either be continuous or undefined, and the default is continuous. So we can either have the water is falling or the water falls, but as we go along, I want you to remember the continuous form of it, and the water is falling. The voice, we can have active, middle passive, and deponent. Let me explain this. We can have active, which is it is doing something, middle passive, and there's only one set of endings for the middle and passive in the present, so we call this the middle passive. And the deponent, which is really middle passive, but it's really a verb that has active meaning but which has middle endings. And we're going to know that from our vocabulary. If our vocabulary has a deponent ending on it, we're going to begin there. The prefix, it has no prefix. The stem is present. There is no tense formative. And the endings are primary. Now, the present active indicative. So, we had the present, which is tense, indicative, which is mood, and now we have the voice, and the voice is active. That is, the subject is acting. The tense is present, voice now is active, the mood indicative, and the endings are primary active. We have a set of endings that are primary, but specifically primary active endings. The aspect, continuous or undefined. Continuous, I am falling. Undefined, I fall. And the continuous should be the first choice. The reason I'm saying this is we move later. We're going to find out that this tense, this stem that we have, has within it a continuous quality. So we just want to keep remembering present is continuous. So in your translations, the first thing that you want to think of is continuous. If continuous doesn't work, then use undefined. Present indicative, primary active endings. Present active indicative endings. The endings are going to change according to person. So let's look at the endings. This is just the endings. The person, if it's first singular, and that is I, the ending is an omega, O. If it's a second singular, which is you, ace, epsilon iota sigma, ace. Third person singular, which is he, she, it, and remember verbs do not have gender, so it could be any of them, is epsilon iota a. So the difference a and ace, the second person has a sigma. First plural, which is we, is amen, and we have the connecting vowel as part of our ending here. All the way through we have. The second plural is you or y'all, plural, and that is ete. Third plural is they, and that is usi, and you'll see at the end of it is a movable nu. So I'm going to do one of my silly things to help you remember things. And we have a few pictures here about the endings, the present active indicative, okay? So we have O, long O, so omega, first person, ace, the card, epsilon iota sigma, O, ace, A, epsilon iota sounds like A, so we have the singular is O, ace, A. The plural, you have a little thing here. Men, amen. At tea, ete. With Lucy, I love Lucy, usi. So we get O, ace, A, amen, ete, usi. So let's look at what it looks like if we put the whole thing together. First singular, we know it's the stem, and luo is a stem that we're going to be using a lot throughout because luo never changes. Okay, no matter what tense we put it into, the endings will never change, and that's why it's such a popular one for grammarians to show how Greek works. So we're going to use luo and luo throughout it in order to show you how the endings work, because we don't care about the stem. The stem's not being affected. So, in all cases, the stem is going to be lu. So with the first person, we begin with lu, and its ending is omega. Okay, lu plus omega, and we get luo. And the meaning of this is I am loosing. Remember, we want to think about continuous first, and or I loose. So all we do with a verb is we have a stem, we're putting on an ending, which happens to be an ending that shows what the pronoun is, and we get a word. Lu, o, I am loosing. And that continuous aspect is contained in the stem, not the ending. So, second person, which is you, we get ace, lu ace, and we get lu ace. You are loosing, you lose. Third singular, lue, and we get lue. He, she, it is loosing. He, she, it looses. Okay? Now, the plural, same thing. We have a stem lu, and we're merely ending endings. And remember what I told you, that connecting vowel that Mounce talks about, I contain within the ending. So we get amen, which is the first person plural ending, we, and you get luamen, which means we are loosing, or undefined is we loose. Second person plural, y'all, is lu plus its ending, ete, at t, and we get luete, which means you all are loosing, you all loose. The plural, third person plural, is they. So we get lu, and we're going to add the third person plural ending, usi. So we get luusi, which means they are loosing, they loose. So let's look at a couple examples of a present active indicative. Luusin auton. The first thing it comes to mind to show you is this nu at the end of luusin is a movable nu, and it comes because the word is before a vowel. The ending is usi. Remember Lucy? Usi. So this is the stem, which has something to do with either loosening or destroying. This is the ending, which tells me it's third person plural. And this is the object. So I get they, because this is a third person plural ending, are loosing it. So let's look at the next one. Blepete ton achlan. Okay, blepete, which is a verb about singing, has an ending ete, at t. Okay, and that tells us that it is second person plural. And ton, this accusative, tells us this is the object of the verb, but the subject is contained within this verb. And the subject, of course, is y'all, because that's the ending. So we get, y'all are seeing the crowd. Okay? Now, when we have a third person verb, it's the only time that we can look outside of the verb for a subject that is not a pronoun. So we have a third person, blepe, and so we can look outside of it and see, is there something in the nominative singular? And there is. Ha'achlas, the crowd. So the crowd sees or is seeing the disciple. The crowd is seeing the disciple. Luamen auton. This men, remember men, a group of men walking? This is we. We are men. And this omicron here is the vowel that I've included. So we get luamen auton. We are loosing it. Okay? We, because we have this ending, men. Blepes ton achlan. The ending here with that sigma is a kind of a giveaway. Lepes ton achlan. This is the second person singular. So you are seeing, and this is the object of that verb, ton achlan. You are seeing the crowd. Blepo ton achlan, same sentence obviously, but this omega at the end of the verb tells us that this verb is first person singular. I am seeing the crowd. Parsing a verb. We're going to parse a verb which is slightly different than what we've done before, so I'm going to go through it with you. One thing that we have, and we've seen this before with Amy, so the person that we have is first, second, or third. The number is singular or plural. The tense at this point, the only tense that we've had is present, so that's going to be the tense. But there are several tenses that we're going to go through, and as we go through them, you're going to parse it with that tense. Voice, we've had active so far. There are three, that is active, middle passive, and deponent in the present, but tomorrow we'll get to the middle. The mood, all of our moods this semester will be indicative. The lexical form is the vocabulary word, and the meaning is the English translation. So, Luis. The person is second, and the second is given by that sigma at the end of it, and it's more than just second, it is singular second. So second singular has a sigma at the end of it, Luis. The tense, of course, present. The voice is active. The mood is indicative. And the lexical form that it comes from is luo. Remember, the lexical form will be the first person singular. Luo, I lose. And the meaning will be the of word, which is you are loosing. So let's look at our vocabulary. And vocabulary is going to bring up verbs. The verbs are going to have omegas at the end of it, so you can recognize them immediately as verbs. Or they're going to have omais a little bit later, but still they tell you these are verbs. Akuo, akuo, akuo. Akuo, with that omega at the end, tells us this is a verb, first person singular, and it means I hear, learn, obey, understand. Akuo, think of acoustics, hearing. Blepo, blepo, blepo. Blepo is I see, that omega at the end, or look at. This is the physical act of seeing rather than the idea of understanding. Echo, echo, echo. I have or hold. Luo, luo, luo. Luo is the term the verb that we're going to be using all the way through, and it means I loose, untie, or destroy. And of course we have a noun here, namas, namas, namas. Namas is second declension, masculine, and it means law or principle. Hapu, hapu, hapu. Hapu is where. Pistuo, pistuo, pistuo. A verb, first person. I trust, have faith in, believe. Prosopan, prosopan, Prosopan. Second declension, neuter, face or appearance. Mounce gives a good example to think of prosopan as throsopon by face, prosopan. Tate, tate, tate. Hate means where, tate means then. Tuflas, tuflas, tuflas. This is an adjective, tuflas, tufle, tuflan, and it is blind. Cara, cara, cara. First declension, feminine, joy or delight.